I believe the future is handmade, and the past and the present have been always handmade. I'm not interested of making more. I'm interested that more artisans and more designers collaborate in a good way, in an equal way, and then we can come all together and provide work. It's amazing how technology can help you depending on what you want to do. For me, it has been very helpful. We're trying to integrate more and more, but always as a tool to improve the handmade processes, not making it as the final method. We have to be very honest that the artisans are the master makers. It's not us, but it's them that have the mastership, like the external eye that can help to do new designs, or that you can be a catalyzer.
Today we have Carla Fernández, a Mexican fashion designer, and our top 500 voices of the business of fashion, who is dedicated to present, preserve, and revitalize the indigenous textile legacy of marginalized communities of Mexico. It's great to have you here with us, Carla. I'm Prakshruti, a third-year fashion design student. So I would like to ask you, the work that you do blends traditional fashion with traditional craftsmanship with fashion design and contemporary fashion design. So why is it important to keep this handmade technique alive in today's industry?
I believe the future is handmade, and the past and the present have been always handmade. This shifted, and that's what we're seeing as the chaos of industrialization and mass production, and thinking of fashion as trash, Because when you take time, the traditional techniques, they take time to produce, They take time. You have to think of what you're doing. You have to harvest your own cotton, or you have to take care of the sheep, to later have the wool. So if you're talking about sustainability processes, there's no better sustainable way of making it than the traditional techniques. That's why we have to learn to go slowly. And countries like yours and mine, we have an amazing traditional craftsmanship. And we have to learn from them. And we have to start making slow fashion. That's why it's so important.
Yes, that's true. That's very true. Also, regarding the same concept, what do you think the industry needs to bridge the gap between modernity and heritage? What is it that the industry is now getting wrong, maybe? And what is it that upcoming designers we have to keep in mind this theory?
I think that you can get a balance. You see it with high fashion houses, like Chanel, for example, that has all these collaborations with métiers d'art, with masters of crafts. And you can be a business. Us as a fashion house, we don't forget we are a business, but you have to balance between craftsmanship and the production. So it's just trying to find yourself not in a greedy position. It's like, oh, I want to make so many things and I want to profit by making more. So maybe you have to just shift your mind and think, it's like, I want to have a business that is profitable, but every single person that works in my business is going to live happily, with what they're earning and and proud of what they're doing. And maybe you're not going to be as big as one of these brands, but you will know that you're doing the right thing, and that you are distributing all the income how it should be.
Yeah.
Not only for some, but for everyone.
Not only for the top 1%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's often a push for businesses to scale up, and do you think is it always a good option, good thing when scaling up is imposed on handmade businesses or small scale slow fashion businesses?
It's not our aim, in our fashion house. We prefer to be very smart on what we are proposing and sharing our knowledge. So other fashion houses, other designers, other artisans will know how things have worked for us correctly or not. So we prefer to be not growing in a scale, but growing in the concept and how this can become also a trend, slow fashion. I'm not interested of making more. I'm interested that more artisans and more designers collaborate in a good way, in an equal way, and then we can come all together and provide work to craftsmanship, provide work to design, consume locally, and make this an opportunity to all of us and try to fight back the big corporations, making it, as a movement, more than one designer trying to grow up, because then you are part of part of the problem.
Hi Carla, I'm Shafali Kare, a fourth year fashion design student from ISDI. Firstly, I'd like to say that whenever I visit your website, the collection that I see, I take a pause to see actually what is happening, because personally I am inclined towards silhouette experimentations. So I feel that your products truly help me absorb and understand to what extent simple shapes can extend towards. So that's really commendable, and I'd like to highlight that. Talking about your design process, you have a very fascinating design process. So what is the key, like the inspiration, or how do you start with actual designing?
In terms of silhouette, it's quite interesting because we work with the DNA of Mexican patterning that comes from squares and rectangles. That's why people tend to think that our fashion is quite Japanese in terms of design, but it's not true. It's very Mexican. The thing is that people are more aware of the kimono and that shape, and it looks very much like the Mexican huipiles, the dresses. This comes out of the loom. You are from India, so you are aware of the sari and how you can make a wrap around dress or a sari, only with a long piece of cloth. Mexico has a very specific history because we were conquered by the Spanish. They had the Western silhouette that you have to cut, and it's more tailored, and it fits the body. You can see the silhouette of the body. That is a completely different pattern system. So what happens? The indigenous way of making clothing with squares and rectangles, they kept the same fabric and they don't cut it, but they adjusted, making pleats and folds and molding the body. You know this because you're a fashion designer as well, and it's like modeling into the mannequin. It's exactly the same. They don't cut it, but they start pleating and they have like this Western silhouette, but they never cut the fabric. So what we did is, in terms of doing new designs, we show the communities that we collaborate with the tricks, and the design methodology that we have, so they could create new silhouettes, always using the traditional way of making clothing in Mexico. And you can actually go to our website, that is carlafernandez.com. There is a specific part of of our website, and you can go to our books. It's an open source and it's in English. They're all bilingual, so you can go through, and it explains our way of making clothing.
So you also mentioned while talking to Prakriti that how you are focused on not scaling up but conceptually deepening your processes. So I'd like to ask that what are these concepts? We know that you have a very Mexican lens to see through fashion, to interpret fashion, but how do you decide like the conceptual development part of a design collection?
Of every collection?
Yeah.
Oof. Every collection has its own world. So, for example, we're working on the next collection, of course, 2026. And I wanted to focus on Mexico being the center of the first globalization in a way. Because with the conquest, again, Mexico was the connection between the Atlantic and the Pacific, between Europe and Asia. So everything would come from India, China, Japan to the Philippines, and the Philippines to Mexico through the Pacific, and will cross to Europe. And all the goods from Europe will cross from Mexico. And that's why it's so complex, the history of my country. Then you will see silks from China that we didn't have. And then you will see the embroideries that come from India. Then India will have Chile and tomatoes coming from Mexico, you know, and it goes on and on. Silver, the silver used to come also from Mexico, laces from Belgium, beads from Eastern Europe, and all that mixed in a very specific, in the south of Mexico. And you would come and think it's like, this is the most Mexican, like what I'm wearing comes from the north of Africa, from Morocco to Spain, Mexico, and then it becomes the traditional attire of my country. And you would never think of it as a craftsmanship that comes from Morocco, but it is, you know. So those connections are the ones that we're working now in our following collection. And I am a historian. I love history, and I love to understand things from its roots. And I use fashion as an opportunity to translate those, how my brain works. And you will see a collection that will explain how Mexico was the very first globalization 400 years ago.
Truly, it's true that influences do matter, and the observation, I feel, your keen eye for observation has truly helped you evolve into this successful professional, I believe. I have this personal inclination towards using technology for sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
So I have explored using 3D printing
Mm-hmm.
as surface ornamentation in my design projects.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that there is scope for integration of technology with heritage and craftsmanship to bring about a sustainable change in the future?
I think so, yes. I use technology not as not 3D printing but I use, for example, WhatsApp changed the way I work, and that is technology. Because before I had to go to the communities and they had to come here, and this change, like the design processes were taking a lot of time, and it was quite difficult, you know. But now we have, you can, you know, just with a call, you can see what the other person is doing. We can have feedback in both sides. It's amazing how technology can help you depending on what you want to do. So for me, it has been very helpful. We're trying to integrate more and more, but always as a tool to improve the handmade processes, you know. always to improve, to help the traditional work to be better, not making it as the final method.
Hello, I'm Aline, a third year fashion design student. What intrigued me most about your work and your way of working is how it has such a close connection to culture and using the help of artisans as them being the cornerstone. So, based on that, I wanted to ask there were many instances where you have mixed the crafts between two or three communities. So, how can we as designers use this to our advantage while being very conscious about cultural appropriation?
It's not a cultural appropriation if you work with the artisan.
Okay.
And that, we have to be very clear on that. Especially, so you have to, if you want to have an embroidery from the charros, you have to work with a charro that makes the embroidery, you know? You cannot do it otherwise, at least in my country, because we have a law that forbids you to make, that protects, that it's protected the intellectual property of the indigenous communities, mestizos and Afro-descendants. But when you work together with the community, then it's not an appropriation, it's a collaboration.
So, for designers like yourself and many others, artisans are the cornerstone of the project and the work. Could you share with us how to effectively communicate with these artisans so that we can get the best out of them in our work?
We have to be very honest that the artisans are the master makers. It's not us, because they have been doing this for at least some of the techniques 3,000 years or maybe 20 years, but it's them that have the mastership, you know? And when you recognize that, you are a medium to help, you know, like the external eye that can help to do new designs, or that you can be a catalyzer. And my advice is just to listen what they want and what you want, you know, and you sit down and you are partners. There's always has to be like this communication that is not one above the other one, that you have to be good partners and listen and ask how they can, we can do better design, better collaborations. And also, for me, it's quite important that the collaboration is not only in the production processes, but also in the creative process, you know? It changes everything. So it's not always like, oh, you do these because that's what I know.
It's a lot about mutual respect, being humble, trying to learn from them because they've been doing it much before all of us.
Yes, and they're amazing designers.
Right.
Yes.
Last but not the least, we live in a very design driven or functionality focused when we try to design garments or clothes. What role do you think that heritage or culture or tradition plays for upcoming fashion designers or for the future of fashion?
Let's remember that tradition is not static. You know, tradition is always evolving. And it's quite innovative. But what is quite interesting is that it's a true sustainability. It's a true way of, as we said before, you know, to maintain the order of creating things, because you do it slowly and you do few of them. So it's quite important to understand why these processes were like that for thousands of years. Then the Industrial Revolution comes and everything becomes faster and you overproduce. We don't need that. This is the chaos that we're living now. So we have to review the traditional ways of making it, and that has that equilibrium with nature. I don't think there's another way, you know? And then when these garments are made by hand, by artisans that you cherish and you know the complexity. That's why it's very important, the communication of why they're made like that. They're made to last. They say no to planned obsolescence. You don't want to discard them, and you use them year after year, and you're very proud of not only the garment, but the story that has behind it.
Thank you so much, Carla.
Thank you.
Knowledge that you've given us has been absolutely insightful. As students, we will look to use these insights not only in our work or in our projects, but also in our day-to-day lives.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much.